Maturity and eloquence are two qualities that I wouldn't normally associate with Edgar Berlanga. But at the kickoff press conference for his fight with Canelo Alvarez, he showed both. Now, I'm sure some people are going to take issue with his gaudy jewelry and what have you, but never mind all that. I'm talking about the way that he spoke. I thought that he came across very calm, very confident, very clear-headed, very measured, and very focused. And Berlanga confirmed something at the press conference, which I mentioned in the previous video I made about this fight, and that is the fact that Berlanga has been studying Canelo for years. He's been obsessing about Canelo, wanting to fight him, dreaming about him even, which raised a few laughs at the press conference, even from Canelo himself. I can't imagine Canelo has been paying as much attention to Berlanga as Berlanga has been paying to him over the years. And so when you get a fighter who is obsessed with another, it can sometimes throw up some surprising results in terms of the way the fight plays out. A couple of examples would be Vitaly Klitschko when he fought Lennox Lewis. Both guys took that fight on 2 weeks' notice. They were both scheduled to fight on the same card. Lewis was supposed to be topping the bill against a Canadian called Kirk Johnson, a 6'2" heavyweight, and Vitaly was supposed to be fighting on the undercard. But Johnson suffered an injury, so he pulled out, and Lewis, who had been out the ring for 12 months and was somewhat overweight and was in his late 30s, agreed to fight the 6'7", 6'8" Vitaly Klitschko, who was in his 20s at the time, as a replacement opponent. So both guys agreed to take the fight on short notice, but for different reasons. Lennox Lewis took the fight on 2 weeks' notice because he didn't think Vitaly Klitschko was any good. And because he didn't think Klitschko was any good, he didn't think that switching from fighting a 6'2" Kirk Johnson to fighting a 6'7", 6'8" Vitaly Klitschko a fortnight before the fight would be a problem. He thought he was going to blast out Vitaly Klitschko like he did Andrew Golota, because at the time, the Eastern European heavyweights hadn't really proven themselves in the professional ranks yet. But Vitaly took the fight because he'd been studying Lennox Lewis for years. And this is something he spoke about after the fight. He said that he'd been studying Lewis for years and he knew exactly what he was going to do if he ever got the opportunity to face him. He had his game plan all mapped out. And the result, of course, was one of Lennox Lewis's toughest ever fights. It surprised a lot of people at the time because Vitaly Klitschko, you may not be aware, had a reputation for being a quitter back then because of what happened in his fight with Chris Bird. But again, the obsession he had with Lennox Lewis manifested itself in the fight. Another example would be when Evander Holyfield fought Mike Tyson. Holyfield had been obsessing about Mike Tyson for years. Even when Tyson was in prison, Holyfield was obsessing about fighting him. Manny Stewart trained Evander Holyfield for his rematch with Riddick Bowe, and he revealed that in the training camp for that fight, all Holyfield was talking about day in, day out was Mike Tyson. Bear in mind, he just lost to Riddick Bowe in their first fight. He came back and had a tune-up against Alex Stewart, then he went into the Bowe rematch. So you would have thought that his entire focus would be on Riddick Bowe. But instead, according to Manny Stewart, all he did was talk about Mike Tyson all the time. Constantly. He was totally and utterly obsessed with fighting him and beating him. Because when Holyfield became world heavyweight champion, he never got the props from the media and from the public that he felt like he deserved. He was living in the shadow of Mike Tyson. They were always comparing him to Tyson, and not favorably most of the time. So he had a massive chip on his shoulder about Mike Tyson. Hence, when he was training for the Bowe rematch at a time when Tyson was in prison, and we didn't know if Tyson was ever going to fight again at that point. So when Tyson did come out of prison and eventually signed to fight Evander Holyfield, Manny Stewart, who wasn't training Holyfield at this point, said that he contacted Don King, who was Tyson's promoter, and told him that he'd made a massive mistake by putting this Mike Tyson-Holyfield fight together. He told King he should have matched Mike Tyson against somebody else, and he says that King replied and said, "What are you on about? Holyfield's washed up, he's finished, he's done. Mike's gonna blow through him in a couple of rounds." And Manny said to him, "You don't understand, this guy is obsessed with Mike Tyson and has been for years. He knows exactly how he's gonna fight him." I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, but this is what Manny Stewart said in an interview. And once again, the obsession that Holyfield had with Mike Tyson played out in the fight. It was evident that one guy was far more prepared for the other guy than vice versa. Now, with all that being said, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get a similar surprise with Canelo Berlanga. It's possible for the reasons I've just outlined. But unlike Vitaly Klitschko and Evander Holyfield, Berlanga has never really shown world-level ability, at least not in my view. So I think he's going to have to up his game several levels to a level that we've never seen from him before in order to give Canelo any real issues. Stranger things have happened in boxing, of course, but it's certainly not the norm. Let's just put it that way. Now, one thing that people did point out at the press conference, the face-off in particular, is how much bigger Edgar Berlanga was than Canelo Alvarez. But of course, Canelo's fought lots of guys much taller than him before. And it kind of makes a mockery of Canelo's excuse for not fighting David Benavidez. Yeah, it's like Benavidez is far too big. Well, I don't think Berlanga is too much smaller than David Benavidez, to be honest. He's a very big super middleweight himself. Berlanga, if you've never seen him, is far more of a puncher than a boxer. He's got a very leaky defense. His speed is okay, a little above average speed maybe. There's nothing in his skill set that really jumps out at you as being particularly good. What he does have though is size. He's shown heart in his fights because he's been down before. He's got physical strength. He's got a pretty good jab and he can punch. It's nothing Canelo hasn't seen before. In fact, on paper, this seems quite similar to the Jaime Munguia fight. Although I suspect Berlanga's physically stronger than Munguia. Munguia's faster than Berlanga, without a shadow of a doubt. Much faster hand speed. But in terms of, as I say, physical strength, I suspect Berlanga will be able to impose himself in the clinches on Canelo a bit better than Jaime Munguia did. If it weren't for the fact that Berlanga has been studying Canelo for years because of this obsession he has with him, then I'd probably have no interest in this fight whatsoever. I'd see it as a predictable mismatch. And that's how I did see it up until fairly recently. But with a bit more contemplation, and especially after seeing Berlanga at the press conference, I've decided, you know what? It's possible that Berlanga's going to do better than most people expect. So those are my thoughts on Canelo Alvarez versus Edgar Berlanga. Again, Canelo should have fought David Benavidez. Benavidez got sick and tired of Canelo ducking, so he moved up to 175, as did David Morrell. So this is what we've got instead. Canelo Berlanga. It's not ideal, but it is what it is. If Berlanga was able to pull off the upset, a lot of people would see it as poetic justice, when cherry picks go wrong, you know, like that. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And before I go, I just want to tell you about this week's exclusive boxing content. I've just uploaded this hour-long, in-depth film study of the Jared Anderson-Martin Bakole fight to my Patreon page, where I analyze the actual video footage and point out the mistakes that both guys made, as well as the things they did right, and ultimately the specific defensive errors which led to Anderson's defeat. If you want to access this video, along with hundreds of hours worth of other exclusive boxing content, as well as our members chat, just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called the Boxing Brotherhood. There's no contract, no commitment. You can cancel at any time, just like Netflix, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Just download the app from the Play Store or the App Store. All the links are in the description box below.